Hello, you're welcome back. In this video, we're going to consider the Computer Science IGCSE for February, March 2025. Of course, we're looking at paper 2.2, which covers algorithm, programming, and logic, but we're basically looking at the programming part of it. So here's a question. It says a sports club uses a 6-character alphanumeric membership code. So there are a few things we need to take note of here, and we need to highlight them. So it's a 6-digit alphanumeric code to identify each member of the club. The one-dimensional array member ID, so this is a 1D array, is used to store the unique membership codes for the clubs. Okay, then the two-dimensional array, which is name 2D, is used to store the names of the club members. So the first and the last name of each member will be stored in separate array elements. The system can store details for a maximum of 1000 members. So the maximum length of this should be 1000. So we need to equally take note of that. And then the position of any member's data is the same in both arrays. For example, the data in index 2 of member ID belongs to the member in index 2 of name. Let me quickly help us visualize this problem using Microsoft Excel. So here is an Excel document explaining what the question looks like. Okay, so I have always liked the fact that you should have a mental picture of what the problem is. That way it is easy for you to write a program. Okay, so here you have the member ID, and there you have the first name and the last name. So that's what this part is trying to tell us, that the first name and the last name of each member will be stored in separate array elements. Okay, so that makes it a 2D array. Okay, because it has rows and columns. Now, but this is a 1D array because it only has a column. Okay, all right. So the other thing again is that the position of any member's data is the same in both arrays. For example, the data in index 2 of member ID belongs to members in index 2, the name. Okay, so the point here is this, that whoever owns this ID owns this name. Whoever owns this ID owns this name. Okay, so that's the way it works. So they must be corresponding. Yeah, so having understood that part, let's proceed. Now, the variable new ID is used to impute a new membership code. So you use that to take the code. Okay, so let's also take note of that. Let me highlight that. Okay, so this is the problem that we need to solve now. Write this program, blah blah blah, all the way to the end. So I am going to copy this later so that we can use it to help us write the program instead of going back and forth this question. But there's something I want us to point out here. Here it says you must use pseudocode or program code. Okay, and add comments to explain how your code works. So commenting is very important. So you can use program or pseudocode. So it is all up to you. I usually prefer to use a programming language to answer this question because the programming language makes it a lot easier. Yeah. You do not need to declare any arrays, variables, or constant. Assume this has already been done. You do not need to initialize the data in the arrays. Now I want us to take note of this part. Now here it says you do need to initialize any variables or constants used if appropriate. Now what is the difference between this statement and this one? This very one is referring to member ID name, new ID. Okay, now the variable names and the data structure that has been mentioned here, you do not need to declare them. Okay, you do not need to initialize the arrays. However, for any new variable that you're going to use outside of the ones stipulated here, you need to initialize them. Okay, so take note of that difference. Then all inputs and output must contain suitable messages. Okay, enough of the long read. Now I am going to copy this part of the instruction. So this is going to help us in writing the program. I'll copy it. I'm going to paste this very instruction here I will select all of them and hit my Ctrl// to turn them into comments. Now this is going to help us in writing the program so that we don't have to switch back and forth the question. Although we have been told not to declare, okay, the arrays and the variables mentioned, in our case we need to, because we intend to run the program so that you see that the program is running correctly. So member ID, let me just use 1 2 3 4 5 6. Remember, the instruction says it must be 6 characters long, so whatever we're doing here must be up to 6 characters. And remember that it is a 1D array, so I'm just going to do this. So I will use this as the sample data to help us run and test to make sure that our program is working well. So I am going to use this as the sample data for the names. Okay, so the first one represents the first name and this represents the last name. Okay, so let us just put up a little comment here to remind us what these guys are doing. So this one stores member ID and this one stores the first name and last name of members. Now the next thing that we need to do, remember that we were told here that it should have a maximum of 1000 members. So there are two ways of actually achieving this. So it is either if you're using a programming language like Java or so, you can declare the array in such a way that it will have a maximum of 1000 elements. Okay, but in our case, since we're using Python, we are going to ensure that in a different way, because with Python, you can still do the same thing with Python, but I don't want to take that approach. Okay, so for that we will say size equals 1000. Okay, so we need to put up a comment here, stores maximum number of members. Okay, we also need to initialize the new ID to an empty string. So with this we have touched all the necessary things that we need for our programming to begin. Okay, so here says provide a menu that offers the choices. So we have to put up a menu that would provide for the user to pick an option. Impute a new member, output list of membership codes, first name and last name, or to stop. Okay, so to do that effectively, let us use this word choice. Choice will be equal to 0 initially. So we're using this to initialize the user's choice. Okay, remember that the person can choose to perform any of these actions. Okay, so we need to validate the person's response. So in order to do this effectively, I will use the while loop. Now while this choice is less than 1 or the choice is greater than 3, we need to keep the user trapped in the loop. So we'll say choice equals so here we are asking the user, what action do you want to perform? I think there should be a question mark here. And then, so we can now give the user the list of options. So these are the list of options. Impute a new member, output the list, and then you stop. So I'll just copy that and paste it here. So option 1, so we say 1, impute new member, so we can edit that a bit. Option 2, so let's just call this output list of members to make it short. Option 3, stop. So I want this to display line by line. So to achieve that, I can put this here and that. So let us try to run this program to see what we will get. Okay, so this is the option that we have here. So if the user chooses something like 0, the person is trapped there. Chooses something like 4, which is higher than 3, you're trapped there until you choose an option between 1, 2, or 3. So let's pick 2. You see, so the program will continue. Okay, so let me put this here again so that it can proceed to the next line. Yeah, so that I don't get to type this here. Okay, so we've done this very part. So but we need to do some commenting again. Remember that here is the part that handles the validation. So let me use this as the comment. So this can go out, and I'll drop this here to serve as the comment. So this one validates a response to the menu. Good. And then this one takes the input. Yeah. So this says input a response to the menu. Good. Okay, so I think we're good here. We can reduce this comment a bit so that it looks better. Okay, so we can just call this menu of choices. Okay, good. So here it says, when imputing a new member, impute a new membership code and check that it contains 6 digits. So we need to check that the membership code contains 6 digits. Now I would like to, I don't know if I should, I would like to do this as a method. I would like to do this as a function. Okay, so I'll give a space here and do this as a function. Now I want to call it check ID. Let the check ID take an input. Okay, so the parameter that will be here will be called ID. And what should this do? If the length of ID, which ordinarily should be a string, is equal to 6. Okay, so this one is going to help us check to make sure that the length is up to 6. Yeah. Okay, so that's when inputting a number. So making sure that it contains 6 digits. So let's copy out all of this. We can put it here. So check that. So checks that code contains 6 characters. So that's for this line. Sorry, I think it should be here. Good. Now after doing this, we also need to check. They say if the new code is 6 characters, check it against all the previously stored membership codes to make sure that it is unique. So we need to make sure that the number is unique. So how can we achieve that? By checking each of this. We need to check this against the ID that will be received. Okay, so just to make sure that it is unique across board. Okay, so the idea here is this. If we find that the ID that was entered already exists, return -1. So this -1 will be the code we will use to represent that there is an error here. Okay, so we can come here to copy this. So we are checking this. Okay, so let me do a comment and then I'll paste this. So checks the code. So checks the code against all the previously stored membership code. Okay, let me take this up here. Good, to make sure that it is unique. Now if after checking and this does not find a similar code, it will have to return 0. So this 0 shows us that everything is okay. So I'm using this as the code, okay, to show that everything is okay. You know, here we checked if it is equal to 6. So it should go ahead to check if we have similar one, right? So now, what if it is not equal to 6? If it is less than 6 or more than 6, what should happen? That's where the else comes in here. Else, it should return -1 because it has failed. The testing has failed. Okay, so it should return -1. Are we together here? Okay. All right. So let me believe that we are together. So I'm going to use this method to always perform this very part. So each time I call that that function, it should tell me, it should return -1 or 0. So with the value, I will not know what next I should do. Okay, so we don't need this part, so we can take this part out, right? Yeah, so we're taking this part out. We now need to check what action did the user pick. Okay, so the user has picking an option, so we need to know what action. So if the user picked 1, that means we need to go ahead to do this input. Yeah, so if the code is not unique, so until the user picks 1, we can't perform this action. So let's go ahead and check. There are two options here. You can use the if else, or you can use the match. So I usually prefer to use match in these cases. So so that's the match. Now the match does the same thing as the switch case in Java. Okay, I think the switch case is also there in Visual Basic. So match. So in case, we say case 1. So if the user picked 1, what should we do? Okay, that's where we now take the ID. What is the ID here? We'll say enter new ID. Okay, so the user gets to put in the new ID. So when the user puts in the new ID, we will now go ahead to check to use our function here. Okay, to check. So if the user fails to put in the correct ID, the user is supposed to retry again. So until the user picks the correct ID, the user does not proceed from here. Yeah, so while check ID, so if it returns 1, that means there is a problem, right? So we need to ask the person to put in the ID again. So this one is a clear prompt to guide the user to know what is expected. So that the ID must be 6 characters long and it must be unique. So having done that, we can repeat this line of code again. So that way the user is kept here until he or she puts in the right format. Okay, so we need to do some commenting here. So here we're checking that it corresponds to this very instruction and that it is unique. Okay, so that's what this part is doing using the function that we created here. So let's assume that somehow the user has scaled through this, so the user has complied with all the requirements, that is making sure that the ID is up to 6 characters long and making sure that it is unique. Now the next thing is for the user to proceed with these very actions. Say if the code is not unique, a new code must be entered and checked. So which is what we did here. Okay, so I can take this out since we don't need it anymore. Let me space here. If you're still watching this video up to this moment, that means you're really enjoying this video. Now why don't you take out this time to like, share, subscribe or follow, depending on the platform that you're watching from. Okay, that way this video gets to as many persons as possible. And remember, that is the only way you can pay us, and it will cost you nothing. Have you done that? Thank you. Let's continue. So this one says, if the code is unique, it is stored in the first available space in the appropriate array. So we now need to do that part here. So we now need to do member ID dot append new ID. Okay, so that way we have added it. Okay, so you can put up a comment here. Stores new member ID. Okay, so we have stored the unique code. So I can take this out because we don't need it anymore. Good. And the new member is required to enter their first name and last name, which are also stored in the corresponding location of the appropriate array. Okay, so first of all, we need to take the first name, right? We need to take the first name and the last name. Enter first name, and then I'll just copy this and paste it. Just change this to last name, and then I'll say last. Yeah, so you will take in the first name, you will take in the last name. So after doing that, now the style I like to use to do this, because of the way I declared my array here, what I would do here is to declare a new array here that is empty. Okay, a new array here that is empty as new member. Then I'll put in the first name there, comma, last name. So I can now go ahead to append this to our name array. Append new member. You still remember this one here? Okay, so that's where the names are. Okay, so I haven't done this. I believe we would have satisfied the conditions for the first option here. Let's read this. The member is required to enter their first name. Okay, so we've done this already. So we can say here takes first name, or you can say impute first name, takes second name, takes takes last name, and then here so this one creates and stores the first name and the last name in a new 1D array. Okay, so this one now stores new member so this one now stores the new member first name and last name in the name array. Okay, so we need to test this to see if it works properly, and the way to ensure that it works properly is by printing. We will print member ID, and then we will equally print name, right? Good. So let's run this program to see. So here we are. So let's choose option 1. So it says enter ID. So let me use the same ID that it's already existing. Remember here, this ID is already existing, to see how our program is going to react. You see, or respond. So member ID must be 6 characters long and must be unique. So that means it is 6 characters, but it is not unique. Now let me try to put like 4 characters. I still have the same issue. Okay, so let me use 7. Okay, all right, so this is up to 6 characters and unique as well. So let's see what happens next. So it's now asking me for my first name. Okay, and then last name. Let's see. So after doing this, you see it has stored them properly and stored the new members. See, they've all been stored properly. So I think we're good to go here, right? And the new member is required to enter the file. Okay, so we don't need these ones anymore. Gone. So the next option will be, when outputting a list of membership code and names, output for each member their membership code. Okay, so we're now dealing with case 2, so I can take this out. We don't need it right now. So the case 2, so in case the user picks option number 2, what should we do? We just basically need to print them out, right? So let's print up a message here. So I want to caption them properly, so I will do ID here, ID, and then I will do some space. Now remember that they are up to 6 characters, right? Let me do 1 2 3 4, and then I'll say name. Okay, let me add more space, 2 more spaces. Okay, so here we are. So this one at least will give us a heading, right, before we can now print. So how do we print this? We need to print this using a loop, okay, because you're printing them one by one and we want them arranged like this. We don't want them displayed like this. It's not actually the proper way to display them. Yeah, so we want them displayed ID, name, name, ID, name, name, ID, name, name. Yeah, okay, let's do that. So we need to use the length of the array to determine how many times this loop would run. Okay, so this one will print them individually. So this is for the member ID. We also need to do the same for the member name as well. Now remember that the only thing that needs to change is the row. The column should be the same. In other words, we're printing the first column. The first column, like we agreed here, contains the first name. The second column will contain the last name. Yeah, good. So after printing that, the next thing we also need to print the name, index. So this will be 1. Yeah, aha. So remember that the array index in Python begins from 0. Okay, now let us run this again to see. So let's do 2. You see, so name that, name that, name that. Okay, so I think I need to push this 1 character in so that it comes out looking great, right? So let's run this again. I'm picking option 2. So here we are. You see, there. So we're good to go here. Okay, so the next option would be, okay, let's say outputting the list of members code. Okay, so let's put that here. Output the list of members code and names. Let's just use that to make it simple. Okay, so we can take this out. We're done with this part. This one says the program will continue until the stop option on the menu is selected. Okay, so it will continue. So let's also put in the stop. Remember that so we need to put all of this inside of a loop. Okay, it will continue running until you say stop. Okay, so that's one thing. Now apart from that, if you don't press stop, it should stop by the time you enter up to 1000 members. Remember that the maximum is 1000. Remember we declared this, right? Aha. So we can use those 2 options, but the option we will use, which is preferable, will be for it to keep running until you have up to 1000 members or until the user says stop. So let's do for stop first. For stop, we'll say case 3. So we can just put up a message to show that we have stopped the program. Okay, let me do this, and then I can say bye, just to make it interactive enough. Okay, so after that we need to break away from the loop that we will be in. Okay, so why this is showing like this is because I have not put everything inside of a loop. So we can say so when the user selects option 3, the program ends. So we can take this out. So I mentioned earlier that why this is showing us as an error is because there is no loop here. Okay, so we will select all of this, remember, up to this point. So this is where we need to cover, where the loop is to cover. So I'll push this, I will indent it to the right. Yeah, after doing that, I can now do while this length of member ID is less than, while it is less than 1000. Okay, then a column there. So this should be able to handle, so this thing will continue until this condition is met. So while it is still less than 1000, it should continue running. So as long as it is less than 1000, the loop continues. So we're good to go here. So let's try that and see how it works. So let's say I pick the third option, it will show me bye. Yeah, so that means it works. So let's pick option number 2 to see if it is going to repeat. Okay, aha, so it has displayed them, and then it's asking us to continue entering again. Okay, so I think we're done with this question. Okay, please let me know in the comment section, do you find this interesting? If there's anything that you think that was missed, please do how to put it up in the comments so that we can all both learn together. Okay, do how to like, do how to share, do how to subscribe, please, so that this video gets to as many persons as possible. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys again in the next video. Bye for now.